Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Before the day pulls us in 100 directions, before the emails, the meetings, the pressure, and the expectations, I want to take a moment to go inward. Just a few minutes to speak to the part of us that often gets drowned out by the noise, the part that's steady, honest, and human. We live in a world that moves fast. It celebrates results, outcomes, appearances. But real strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's found in quiet moments. In the stories we tell ourselves, in the choices we make when no one's watching, because how we start our day matters. The words we repeat to ourselves, the thoughts we feed, the beliefs we reinforce, they shape the way we show up. Not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything's fine. It's about grounding ourselves in something real, something that holds up under pressure, something we can return to when things feel uncertain. So this morning, I want to offer 3 simple, powerful reminders, not as motivational fluff, but as anchors, as tools, as quiet truths that can shape how we lead, how we grow, and how we connect. These aren't just things to say, they're things to live starting now. Each morning before the weight of the day presses in and the noise of the world grows loud, remind yourself of this simple truth. You are in control of your attitude, not the world around you. It's easy to wake up and immediately fall into reaction mode. Emails, news, texts, meetings, traffic. It feels like the world is already spinning before your feet even hit the floor. But the reality is, no matter how chaotic, unpredictable, or unfair the outside world may seem, your internal world is your domain. You can choose how you respond to everything that comes your way. This idea isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's not about blind optimism or ignoring difficulties. It's about accepting that while you cannot control everything that happens, you always have power over the mindset you bring to each situation. That's where your real strength lies. Your attitude shapes how you experience the world and how the world experiences you. 2 people can go through the exact same situation, losing a job, dealing with a delay, facing a criticism, and emerge with completely different feelings about it. The difference isn't in the situation. It's in the story they told themselves about what happened and what it means. By owning your attitude, you take responsibility for your narrative. It becomes less about blame and more about choice. There's power in that. There's freedom in knowing that you can wake up and decide to be kind, to be grateful, to be patient, even if no one else around you is. You can decide to approach your work with curiosity instead of dread. You can choose to see challenges as puzzles rather than punishments. This choice doesn't always come easily. It takes practice, and sometimes you'll forget. That's why you remind yourself every morning. Some days that reminder will be enough to shift your energy before you even leave the house. Other days, it will carry you through a tough conversation or a frustrating meeting. And some days, it might just keep you from spiraling when everything feels out of control. But even in the worst moments, knowing that you are the author of your attitude gives you a sense of groundedness. It helps you return to yourself when the world feels overwhelming. This mindset becomes even more powerful when shared. When you bring that calm, steady presence into a room, people feel it. Your attitude can shift the tone of a conversation, soften someone's defensiveness, open up a space for real connection. That doesn't mean you have to be cheerful all the time. It means being intentional, being self-aware, and showing up with integrity. It means pausing before reacting, choosing compassion over sarcasm, curiosity over judgment. You lead by example, not by forcing positivity, but by embodying clarity and purpose. Over time, this practice of owning your attitude becomes part of who you are. It starts in the quiet moments, in the way you talk to yourself before a big decision, in the way you breathe through a difficult commute, in the way you choose grace instead of anger. Those small, internal choices build on each other. They create a foundation that's not easily shaken. And even when life throws you off balance, you'll have something solid to return to. People often chase confidence, but real confidence starts here. When you trust yourself to choose your attitude, no matter what's happening around you, you develop a quiet kind of resilience. You stop giving your power away to every delay, disagreement, or disappointment. You learn to hold space for discomfort without being consumed by it. And slowly, the world begins to feel a little less overwhelming, not because it changed, but because you did. This is not about being unaffected. It's about being anchored. You can still feel frustration, fear, sadness, but you don't let them steer the ship. You acknowledge them, sit with them if you need to, and then choose how you want to move forward. That's what control really looks like. Not denial, but direction. And that direction starts the moment you wake up. Before the news, before the inbox, before the scroll. It starts with a breath, a pause, and a quiet statement to yourself. I am in control of my attitude, because when you control your attitude, you shape your experience. You write your story, no matter how loud the world gets. Every setback is preparing me for something greater. It's a truth that doesn't always feel true in the moment. When you're in the middle of disappointment, when things fall apart, when the answer is no, or the door closes, or the effort you poured in doesn't pay off the way you expected, it's hard to believe there could be something bigger at work. But there often is. Growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens in the friction, in the detours, in the unexpected pauses that force us to look inward and reassess. Setbacks challenge our assumptions, expose what we're still holding onto too tightly, and make space for something we didn't even know we needed. It's tempting to take failure personally. To look at a missed opportunity and think it means you weren't good enough or that you wasted your time. But not all failure is a reflection of your worth or your ability. Sometimes it's just redirection. A course correction you didn't see coming. You might not realize it until weeks or months or even years later. But what feels like a loss in one season often turns out to be the very thing that positioned you for the win in the next. That breakup that cracked you open, that job you didn't get, that project that didn't land, they all carry lessons. Not because life is trying to teach you a lesson in some dramatic way, but because the experience itself reshapes you. It expands your capacity. It humbles you. It sharpens your focus. When you hit a wall, you start asking different questions. You stop cruising on autopilot and start wondering what really matters. That's where clarity comes from. That's where alignment starts to form. Maybe you discover you've been chasing something that wasn't actually meant for you, or that you've been measuring success in someone else's terms. The setback becomes a mirror. It reflects the habits, beliefs, or expectations that need to shift. And in that uncomfortable space between what you hoped for and what actually happened, there's a spark of something new, resilience, perspective, creativity. The kind of strength you can't fake. This doesn't mean you should welcome setbacks like old friends. They hurt. They can shake your confidence, test your patience, and bring up all kinds of self-doubt. But if you let them, they also refine you. They stretch your capacity for empathy, make you more aware of your blind spots, help you appreciate the wins when they come. Every person you admire, every leader you look up to, has failed, probably more times than you think. What separates them isn't luck. It's that they kept going. They let the failure teach them without letting it define them. Preparation doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like waiting, like falling short, like being in exactly the place you don't want to be. But there's work happening under the surface. Character being shaped, perspective shifting. Even when you can't see the outcome yet, you're being prepared, and that preparation is never wasted. You bring it with you into the next chapter. It shows up in how you handle pressure, how you treat people, how you bounce back after the next curveball. It gives you a depth you wouldn't have had otherwise. When you start to see setbacks this way, something shifts. You stop being so afraid of them. You stop letting them steal your momentum. You start moving with more trust, not blind faith, but earned trust in your own ability to adapt, to rebuild, to come back stronger. You realize that your path doesn't have to look like anyone else's, and that your timing doesn't have to match someone else's expectations. The detour is still the path. The pause is still forward motion. You're not behind. You're just in the part of the story where the hero hasn't won yet. It takes discipline to hold this perspective. It's easier to give in to frustration, to spiral into comparison, to check out emotionally. But if you keep showing up, keep listening, keep learning from what didn't work, you build something way more valuable than an unbroken streak of wins. You build wisdom. You build grit. You build a kind of quiet power that doesn't need to prove itself all the time. And when that next opportunity comes, and it will, you'll be ready in ways you couldn't have been before. Because the setback shaped you. It revealed you. It made sure that when the greater thing arrives, you're not just lucky enough to receive it, You're strong enough to hold it. I will lead with empathy, not ego. That decision alone can shift the culture of a team, a conversation, or an entire day. Leadership is not a title or a position. It's how you choose to show up for the people around you. And the most powerful kind of leadership doesn't come from trying to be the smartest or the loudest in the room. It comes from choosing to understand before trying to be understood. It comes from listening when it would be easier to talk, from seeing the person behind the performance, from choosing connection over control. Ego wants to protect itself. It craves validation, recognition, and power. But empathy is about presence. It's about setting your own need to be right or important aside so that someone else can feel seen, heard, and valued. This doesn't mean shrinking yourself or ignoring your own needs. It means leading from a place of grounded confidence instead of fragile pride. Ego says, I already know. Empathy says, I'm willing to learn. Ego demands. Empathy invites. And people feel the difference. They remember how you made them feel. They respond to how safe or unsafe you made the space. When you lead with ego, people may comply, but they won't bring their full selves. When you lead with empathy, people trust you. They open up. They contribute more freely. They care because they feel cared for. Empathy doesn't mean you lower your standards or avoid hard conversations. It means you approach those moments with humanity. You can challenge someone while still honoring their dignity. You can give feedback in a way that builds instead of breaks. You can make decisions that are firm without being cold. That balance isn't easy. It takes emotional maturity and real self-awareness. You have to catch yourself when the urge to dominate shows up. You have to pause when defensiveness rises. You have to remember that leadership is service, not status. One of the most important things you can do as a leader, whether you're leading a team, a family, or just yourself, is to stay curious, to ask real questions. When someone disagrees with you, do you dismiss them or dig deeper? When someone struggles, do you rush to judge or stop to understand? The answers to those questions will reveal what kind of environment you're creating. Empathy is not always efficient. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes patience, but it pays off. It builds trust. And trust is what makes people willing to go the extra mile, not out of fear or obligation, but because they feel like they're part of something meaningful. Ego makes everything about you, your success, your image, your control. Empathy expands the focus to include others. It allows for shared ownership, shared growth. It shifts the question from a how can I win to how can we rise together? And when you make that shift, something powerful happens. The people around you feel it. They relax. They contribute. They bring their creativity and honesty, not just their compliance. That kind of environment is where innovation happens. It's where people take risks, speak up, support each other, and grow even in moments of tension. Empathy can diffuse what ego would escalate. A leader driven by ego hears a challenge and sees a threat. A leader grounded in empathy hears the same challenge and sees an opportunity to clarify, to connect, to collaborate. This doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Empathy and boundaries are not opposites. In fact, they support each other. The most empathetic leaders often have the clearest standards because they know that clarity is kindness. They don't manipulate or guilt people into doing what they want. They lead with transparency. They show up with consistency. And they take responsibility for their impact, not just their intentions. To lead with empathy is to lead with courage, because it requires you to be honest with yourself and with others. It asks you to show up even when you don't have all the answers. It asks you to be willing to feel discomfort, to own your mistakes, to keep learning. That's not weakness, that's strength. And it creates a ripple effect. When people see you model empathy, they're more likely to show it to each other. When they see you slow down and really listen, they remember what it feels like to be respected. And that memory shapes how they show up tomorrow, not just for you, but for everyone around them. The legacy of a leader isn't built in a single moment. It's built over time, in the daily decision to lead with intention. To lead with empathy is to put people first, not as a strategy, but as a principle. It's to recognize that results don't exist without relationships, that every person on your team and your orbit is carrying something you can't see. And that when you choose to lead with empathy, you give them more than direction. You give them dignity.